thank you for tuning to ARIRANG News right now here in Korea. We are giving you our continued coverage of the special coverage of the search and rescue efforts to find survivors at the site of the tragic ferry accident. This is Daniel Che with the updates. Now, we've been hearing uplifting reports only to be disappointed time and again, but now it seems we have some positive developments from the South Korean rescue team. For more details, we'll go to our Hwang Sung-hee at the Central Disaster Safety Headquarters in Seoul. Sung-hee, it seems like we're getting conflicting reports all day long. Something positive we have is the latest, I hope, right?
Sorry, Daniel, I have some disappointing news. The latest we're hearing is that the divers have withdrawn from the vessel after one of the guidelines broke at around 4 p.m. Korea time, which is about an hour ago. Not much detail on that yet, though. The Coast Guard had confirmed that 2 divers from the South Korean Navy succeeded in entering a compartment on the second floor of the vessel. The second floor is where cargoes are stored, and now the Coast Guard says that the divers were unable to go deeper inside because the route was blocked by cargoes. They left 14 minutes after entering the vessel, according to reports so far. The Coast Guard said the divers also entered the steering room of the vessel. Daniel, all this comes after officials at the Central Disaster Safety Headquarters said their earlier announcement of a successful entry into the cafeteria of the capsized vessel was inaccurate. It had said that the rescue team installed 3 guidelines that can reach the cafeteria and that divers would begin full-scale rescue operations beginning at 3 p.m. Korea time today, which was about 2 hours ago. Experts say the latest news of the 2 divers are a disappointment and that the rescue operations seem to be in their very early stages. Daniel?
Well, at least we have a beginning to the rescue operation there. Finally, we've actually went through the ship. Now, more than 2 days have passed since the Seoul ferry capsized, Sung-hee, and additional bodies are being recovered at the site, I hear, but no news of any more survivors, unfortunately.
That's right. The bodies of 2 male students were recovered about 500 meters away from the capsized vessel earlier this afternoon. This comes after the body of a middle-aged man who was wearing a life jacket was recovered in the morning, putting the total confirmed death toll at 28. 12 bodies have been confirmed as being high school students, teachers, 3 crew members, and 1 passenger. 10 bodies have yet to be identified, but 7 are believed to be high school students. 268 people still remain missing, and unfortunately, the number of survivors remains unchanged. Daniel?
Well, we do hope that number will change sometime soon. Thank you for that update, Sung-hee. That was our Hwang Sung-hee reporting from the Central Disaster Safety Headquarters in Seoul. Now let's go live to Jindo Harbor on Jindo Island, just 20 kilometers from the site of the search and rescue mission, where our Kwon So-ah is standing by. So, can you fill us in with the current situation there?
Daniel, as the hours pass, hope seems to be fading as more dead bodies have been recovered. Now, helicopters have moved the bodies here to Jindo Harbor, where a temporary morgue has been set up. Now, as for the Seoul ferry, which was said a couple of hours ago that it had disappeared out of sight, it is said that it has not sunk entirely, but is just below the surface of the water. Now, the search for survivors is expected to begin as soon as the process of inserting oxygen into the ship is completed. Now, the families here at the harbor who are seeing how the rescue progress is going are crying and also praying at the waters. And I also saw some shouting in frustration and anger towards the government about the slow rescue progress, and also some shouting towards reporters here too and saying, don't film us.
Right, all the emotional reactions are very understandable at this point. It must be a hard situation for them. So is there any talk about what may happen after the search for survivors, and what's the next step going to be for the rescue operation? So,
Well, it looks like that discussions will continue on what will happen to the pulling out of the ship and of the ferry, of course. Now, 4 cranes have arrived earlier here, and in addition to the 4 cranes, a so-called floating dock will be included in the process. Experts say the process could take months, and families, however, are worried that as soon as cranes are used and the ferry shifts, then that could kill any possible survivors, which means the families are still holding on to the last bit of hope. And that's all I have for now, but I'll be back with more later on. Back to you, Daniel.
Well, thank you, Soa. That was our Hwang Sung-hee reporting live on the situation at the Hwang Harbor on Jindo Island. And at an indoor auditorium on Jindo Island, the families of the missing are trying their best not to lose hope. As the hours turn into days, they wait for any news about their loved ones. And we turn to Yurian, who is standing by at the gymnasium. So, Liana, how are things looking over there?
Hi, Daniel. Ever since we've received reports that air was being injected into the vessel earlier today, the families here have been closely watching the monitors here that show live feeds from the site of the accident and news footage as well. Frustrations continue to grow here at the auditorium as families are just hearing news on the rising death toll. There are a number of Coast Guard officials here who are trying their best to answer the questions these families of victims have, but they're growing more emotional as more time passes.
Right, and I can hear the emotional cries on the background there. Leon, I hear there were some complications down there. Families not really getting accurate information on the rescue operations?
You're right. There's been quite a commotion here with parents of the victims taking the mic one by one to express frustration on the lack of transparency into the rescue operations. Earlier this morning, the head of the victims' families here issued a plea statement, which was broadcast nationwide, asking people across the country to help them rescue their children. Now, families here are feeling they need all the help they can get after finding out that the number of rescue personnel announced by the government yesterday and the actual number put out there was quite different. And for the families who have grown weak and distressed from days of waiting, there is a special care center set up here at the gym where nurses and medical personnel are taking care of people, also offering mental help for many that are distraught here at the gymnasium. What you're hearing right now in the background is the wailing of a parent, of course. And the past 2 nights have been extremely hard for these families of the victims. They have been under an overwhelming amount of stress. They just simply look exhausted, as many of them haven't slept much throughout the night either. Daniel?
Well, those continued conflicting reports probably add to their anger and frustration. Leon, thank you for that report. That was our Yurian reporting from Jindo Indoor Auditorium, where many of the family members of the now 268 missing are gathered, waiting for news of their loved ones. And with further details, we're joined by Park Ji-won from the ARIRANG News Center. The team in charge of investigating this disaster held a press briefing in the southern city of Mokpo earlier today. What did we learn, Ji-won?
Yes, Daniel, the joint investigation team composed of the nation's prosecutors and police announced their interim report this morning, and it's been confirmed that the ferry's 26-year-old third mate, not the captain, was steering the 6,800-ton ferry when the vessel encountered trouble. She graduated from Mokpo National Maritime University 3 years ago and started working for this company in December, so it has been just about 4 to 5 months. Korean regulations mandate that a vessel more than 3,000 tons should be navigated by a first or second mate. And considering that the Seoul ferry weighs more than twice that, it's clear violation of regulations. And fingers are being pointed towards a captain who is believed to have been away from the steering room at the time of the incident. However, regarding the exact location of the captain at the time of the crisis, testimonies have been so far differed.
Well, some disappointing developments there. Are we any closer to knowing what caused the ferry to capsize, Ji-won?
The joint investigation team said they were still looking into the case. They summoned the third captain for third time and plan to file an arrest warrant for the captain later today. And another crew member of the ship was also summoned this Friday and is currently being investigated. Earlier in the day, prosecutors raided the offices of ferry operator Chung Hae-jin Marine to find out more evidence, and every surviving member of the ferry's crew and top management personnel have been banned from leaving the country. They are also looking into whether excessive renovation on the ship may have been a factor.
Well, the people responsible will have to live with the heavy guilt for the rest of their lives. There have been reports of text messages thought to be from survivors on the capsized ship, but those were found to be pranks, I heard.
Yes, Daniel, those messages gave false hope to the whole nation yesterday, especially to the weary families of the missing. So investigators said they would draw up punitive measures against those who are spreading groundless rumors through social networking sites about the accident.
Well, Jiwon, thank you for that. Do keep us updated. That was our Park Jiwon from our news center. Now, in trying to determine what caused the passenger ferry to capsize, investigators start looking from the beginning, including the route that the ship took. The Korea Coast Guard had suggested that the most possible cause for the ship capsizing was that the ship veered off course and made an abrupt change of direction. But there are still conflicting reports about whether it actually did. Our Shin Se-min has more.
Speculation remains over whether the ship was actually following its directed path. Prosecutors and police on Friday searched the main offices of the owner and operator of the now sunken ship, Chung Hae-jin Shipping Company. The Seoul ferry sailing records as well as computer files were seized, and investigators are looking into the actual pathway of the ship leading up to the moment of disaster. There are conflicting reports still more than 2 days since the ship started listing. West Regional Headquarters Korea Coast Guard reportedly said the Seoul is believed to have turned quickly, but added it is still too early to confirm the cause of the sunken ferry. Earlier, the Maritime Police said the ferry diverted slightly from the advised route, although not completely off course. At a briefing at the Central Disaster Headquarters Thursday, the General Director of the National Maritime Policy Agency said that all ships leaving Incheon Port en route to Jeju Island are advised to go around Pyeongpungdo Island. However, the ship chose a different route closer to shore as a shortcut.
The ferry chose to sail the path away from the advised route, but even then, it isn't considered off course.
The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said otherwise. Officials in a report said that the Seoul ferry was on track and followed the directed seaway. The chief of the Coastal Shipping Division, Kwon Jun-young, said there is no official term for an advisory or recommended route, and that data shows the ferry took the path it intended to take. The one man who could confirm the ship's route and what may have caused it to sink isn't talking, though. Captain Lee Jun-suk has been questioned twice now by authorities, but reportedly isn't saying much, aside from that he is sorry for what's happened. An arrest warrant on multiple charges, including manslaughter, is expected to be issued for him as soon as this Friday. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, the salvage cranes that will lift the Seoul ferry up from where it sits have arrived at the scene a little earlier than expected, as our Kwon So-ha told us earlier in the newscast. But it could take up to 2 months to get the 6,800-ton ferry to shore, and authorities aren't yet sure when the lift will start. Our Song Ji-san has the details.
4 years ago, when the Korean warship Cheonan was sunk, it took 1 month to lift it from the ocean floor, and it weighed just 1/5 of what the Seoul does. The passenger ferry, at more than 6,800 tons, is one of the largest operating in the nation. 180 vehicles and cargo weighing 1,200 tons were on board when the ferry departed Tuesday evening local time. Add that to the water that has since inundated the ferry, the total weight that the cranes will have to lift easily exceeds 10,000 tons. 4 cranes with capacity of 10,000 tons combined have approached near the waters of the sunken site and are on standby. But the government says the lift will not be carried out without the consent of families of the missing, as shifting the vessel could jeopardize the safety of possible survivors who at this point would have to rely on air pockets to stay alive. The ferry must be turned upright first in order to be lifted, to minimize further damage and to stabilize the lifting process. Divers will fasten cable wires underwater to the vessel to lift it, But authorities say the lack of experience in lifting a vessel of this size, along with fast currents and poor visibility, could delay the process. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
The world is reaching out to Korea during this very difficult time. U.S. President Barack Obama offered his deep condolences to the victims of the ferry disaster and pledged Washington's full support for the ongoing search and rescue operations during a news conference at the White House Thursday.
Before I begin, I just want to express, on behalf of the American people, our deepest condolences to the Republic of Korea and the families of all those who've seen their loved ones lost when a ferry sank within the last couple of days. As one of our closest allies, our commitment to South Korea is unwavering in good times and in bad.
Obama added that he will convey this message in person when he visits Korea for a previously planned trip next week. Earlier, the leaders of China and Singapore echoed his sentiments, expressing condolences to the victims and their bereaved families. Now, 179 passengers were rescued on the day of the accident. They may have survived, but many of them have to be treated physically and psychologically. Let's now go live to our Connie Kim, who joins us from the Korea University Ansan Hospital, where the largest number of patients are being treated. Connie, before we talk about the survivors, I know more bodies have been brought to the hospital. It must have been an emotional scene over there. What's the atmosphere like right now?
Well, Daniel, I'm standing in front of the funeral hall of Korea University Ansan Hospital. And as you can see behind me, there are continuous people coming here to say their last goodbyes to their long-lost loved ones. Now, there have been no additional deceased passengers arriving here this afternoon after 2 arrived this morning. Now, the funeral hall has somewhat calmed down, but it's still filled with woes, and there are continuous sobs heard inside. Now, a total of 5 of the dead are here in the hospital, and with streams of tear-stained friends and families paying their respects at the hospital. Townwon High School is considering setting up an incense altar within the school or the Ansan Olympic Museum.
Connie, a number of the students who managed to escape the sinking ferry with their lives are also receiving treatment at the hospital. How are they doing?
Well, earlier in the afternoon, a press briefing was held, and according to the director of the hospital, he said that currently there are 76 patients being treated here with medical treatments. Now, 72 of them are from Townwon High School, along with 1 teacher and 3 other passengers. He said a stress test was conducted on the students and said most of the teenagers are suffering from moderate levels of stress, but declined to mention specific numbers. He also said depending on their mental conditions, they have provided counseling sessions to both parents and students. Officials say there are teenagers with harsh critical conditions who cannot speak at the moment from shock. They said they'll continue to provide help to students and parents and will also cooperate with the education and welfare ministries.
Well, we do wish them well and good luck to the people treating and attending them. Thank you, Connie. That was ARIRANG News reporter Connie Kim reporting from Korea University Ansan Hospital, where many of the injured are currently being treated. Now, it's almost inevitable that dramatic moments are caught on film in this day and age of smartphones. Newly released footage shows when the ship first encountered trouble. We have another amateur video from inside the ferry, which reveals the harrowing moments when water started gushing in. Our Connie Lee has more.
You can see the ferry from afar in the midst of the fog. The ship is listed about 45 degrees. This amateur video, captured about 30 minutes after the ship tipped over, shows the arrival of the first helicopters to rescue passengers on the deck of the boat. Merchant ships and fishing boats also approach the scene. The ferry has now listed even more, and you can see heavy shipping containers shifting on the deck of the boat. Fishing boats speed up closer to the scene in frantic attempts to rescue anyone on board. But the ferry is quickly submerged, with jets of water shooting out as the ship is now nearly completely engulfed. This just in about 2 hours' time. In another video taken on cell phone by one of the passengers shows the harrowing moments the ship started sinking. A passenger yells out that water is rushing in, water is rushing in. Other passenger videos have also been circulating on the internet in the past 2 days, including one that shows passengers clinging onto walls and their lives as the ship was slanted nearly 90 degrees. In the meantime, an announcement rings out on the loudspeakers. It tells passengers not to move and to stay put. And that's exactly what students here in this video are doing. The footage taken by a surviving passenger shows students staying where they are, some laying down with their life vest on inside the ship that is clearly starting to capsize. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
The search for survivors in waters off Korea's southwestern coast continues. And joining us now is Michelle Park for a look at the conditions down near Jindo. Michelle, how are the conditions in the area right now?
Well, it's still looking a bit gray and foggy in Jindo, and the winds have calmed down. And the velocity of the tide currents is estimated at between 1.8 and 10 kilometers per hour. Now, there are 3 times of the day when the slow tides will be coming in, and which would help search and rescue efforts. Now, 2 of the times already have passed, but there is one more to come, and it's at 10:25 p.m. local time, which will last only about like an hour or so. Now, the water temperature is currently at 11.5 degrees, which is similar to yesterday, with winds blowing at 3.8 meters per second and the height of the wave at 1 to 2 meters. Now, we'll continue to monitor the situation down near Jindo and just hope for the best. Now, that's all I have at this hour. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Daniel.
Thank you for that, Michelle. Now, before we let you go, we have an update coming in. It seems like the pain was a little bit too much, and the responsibility possibly was a little bit too much for one person to bear. By surname Kang, he is the vice principal of the high school, Tanwon High School, where most of the students were on the ferry at the time. He is 52 years old. Unfortunately, he hung himself in a tree outside nearby the Jindo Indoor Stadium there. We will have more updates coming to you, and that's all from us for this hour, though, but we will have more coverages coming in, and do stay tuned to ARIRANG News on the top of the hour for more updates. This has been Daniel Che.